one interesting or random storyline for each MLB team going into the 2025 season. Let's talk about it. For organization's sake, we're going to start in the East, and why not with last year's World Series runner-up? So, New York Yankees. Is Fernando Cruz actually good? While they could have done something on Aaron Judge or a young player like Jason Dominguez, I want to focus in on pitching coach Matt Blake's latest project in Fernando Cruz. Because outside of having a K rate towards the top of the league, his splitter has a career whiff rate of 58.4% and a career batting average against of just .099. Which, by the way, is the third best in the StatCast era among any pitch. And with somewhat recent Yankee development success stories like Luke Weaver, Clay Holmes, Ian Hamilton, Michael King, or Nestor Cortez, you have to wonder if Fernando Cruz can join this list to create an absolute super pen in the Bronx behind Luke Weaver and the recently acquired Airbender. Baltimore Orioles. Is GM Mike Elias a fraud? Okay, that might be a bit dramatic. But let's have a conversation. The Orioles will pay $54.5 million this year to Tyler O'Neill, Tomoyuki Sagano, Charlie Morton, and Andrew Kittredge. Is this unfair for me to say? Like, the Orioles are top contenders in the American League in 2025. I mean, that's what they're perceived as. And in an offseason where they could have taken the next step as a team, they kind of cheaped out. Look, I know they have to try and pay Gunnar Henderson and Adley sooner than we think, but the O's moves recently have just felt underwhelming, and the subtractions of Corbin Burns and most likely Anthony Santander make it worse. Zach Eflin was a good deadline move, but they cashed Connor Norby and Kyle Stowers for Trevor Rogers, a guy who was pitching at Norfolk by the end of the year. They gave up a beating heart for Eloy Jimenez. Why couldn't they have landed Minaya or Buehler? Why weren't they the team to pull off the Luzardo or Crochet trade? And yeah, I'm confident the Orioles' strategy of acquiring variants of the same white guy will lead to wins. But I don't know. I just wish they were more aggressive. And I'm really curious to see if I'm wrong about Mike Elias and Co.'s moves this year. Look, I know that one was very negative, but I can promise you that the rest of them, I'm pretty sure the rest of them are at least neutral, if not all positive. And to prove that point, Tampa Bay Rays, this electric rotation. Shane McClanahan, Taj Bradley, Ryan Pepio, Shane Baz, and Drew Rasmussen. If healthy, which is always the million-dollar question with this team, you have 5 guys who can go out there and easily strike out close to 10 over 2 turns of the lineup. And me and you both know that's all they're getting. Hell, Shane McClanahan was one of the best pitchers on earth before injury in 2023. Taj Bradley had a 9-start stretch in 2024 at the sub-1 ERA. Ryan Pepio had a K/9 near 10 last year. Shane Baz returned from injury to have an ERA of 3 over 80 innings. Drew Rasmussen has a career 2.72 ERA as a Ray. And Joe Boyle, who they traded Jeffrey Springs for, has great stuff. Well, at least when he's within a zip code of the strike zone. Regardless, I love starting pitching, and the Tampa Bay Rays are going to be must-watch. Toronto Blue Jays, Vladdy Jr. and Bo Bichette's final act. In 2021, Vladdy Jr. led baseball in homers, and Bo Bichette led the American League in hits, and they did so at ages 22 and 23 respectively. And while this seemed like the birth of a new golden age of Blue Jays baseball, they have gone a combined 0-6 in the postseason as a duo. And while Jr. had an incredible 2024 campaign, Bo Bichette, who was one of the more consistent hitters in the game prior to that year, had an absolute disaster of a season. So with both of them poised to hit the open market next offseason, 2025 will most likely be the final time this duo takes the field as teammates. And hopefully for the sake of Toronto and these two's pockets, they have a season similar to 2021. Boston Red Sox, the Big Three. Roman Anthony, Marcelo Meyer, and Christian Campbell. Boston's top 3 prospects have been so highly regarded that MLB Pipeline had them all in their top 10 of their top 100 list. The 20-year-old outfielder Roman Anthony is the best of the group, and he's been ranked the #1 prospect in baseball by several publications, and it's easy to see why. His game is kind of polished all around, and he hit .344 at AAA. So considering these 3, Jarren Duran off a breakout year, the consistently great Rafi Devers, the eccentric but hard-hitting Tristan Casas, and a pitching staff that's finally coming around, 2025 could be the first season or prequel season to a new era of Red Sox success. Let's go to the National League now. New York Mets. Can Juan Soto be their first MVP? The New York Mets and their basically new $800 million star Juan Soto have one key thing in common, and that's despite some close calls, I'm looking at you 2021 and 2007, neither have taken home an MVP award. And in 2025, if Ohtani's not immediately back to firing in all cylinders as a two-way guy, Soto has a pretty legit shot at the award. And what a way to start a record-breaking contract than by doing something that no one in franchise history has ever done. And it's realistic, because while some attribute his 2024 success to a hitter-friendly park, almost all of his expected numbers saw jumps, and according to StatCast, he would have had a career high in homers at every park except Detroit. And look, Soto's just too good to not have an MVP. Atlanta Braves, the return of Ronald Acuña Jr. For obvious reasons, athletes struggle to bounce back from an ACL tear, let alone two, especially when they're in both knees. And that's exactly what happened to Ronald Acuña Jr. Because after tearing his right ACL in 2021, Acuña bounced back to win the MVP award in 2023. However, after dealing with soreness in that ACL in 2024 spring training, in May of that same year, he went out and tore his left ACL, which is pretty horrific, and I feel terrible for him. However, I'm a bit more optimistic, because athletes have bounced back from worse knee injuries. Lindsey Vonn smoked her ACL like more than 3 times, I think, and she still came back as a world champion. Linebacker Thomas Davis made 3 All-Pros after 3 ACL tears, and Megan Rapinoe won a Ballon d'Or Féminine, I can't speak French, and a World Cup after 3 tears as well. And yes, we've seen explosive athletes like RG3 and Derrick Rose watch their careers be crippled by knee injuries. And while we have to wait and see what bucket Acuña eventually falls into, I still am pretty positive that he'll be a productive player still. Because yes, he probably won't have the same stolen base peaks that he had in 2023. But I think what we forget about that season were how good his peripheral hitting numbers were. Because outside of the 337 average and 40 homers, he had 247 batted balls over 100 miles an hour, which is the most in the StatCast era by over 30. And it's a similar story when you raise it to 105 miles an hour. So yeah, he might not be the same crazy tooled out freak that he was in his MVP year, but in my opinion at least, I think he can still be one of the best hitters in Major League Baseball. And it'll be really interesting to see what version of him comes out in 2025. Philadelphia Phillies. Can Wheeler finally win a Cy Young? Zach Wheeler is a king without a crown. Since 2020, Zach Wheeler is, in my opinion, the best pitcher in baseball. This decade, he has the second most innings pitched, the third best ERA among starters with at least 100 starts, easily the best WAR regardless of calculation, and he's also like a historically great postseason performer, rocking a 2.18 ERA in October with a better whip than Mariano Rivera. Yes, you heard that correctly. Zach Wheeler has a better postseason whip than the guy who's allowed less runs in the postseason than men have walked on the fucking moon. But despite all of this, Wheeler does not have a Cy Young award, falling just short this past year to first-time winner Chris Sale, and finishing runner-up in 2021 to Corbin Burns in a race that I think he should have won. I mean, look at that innings pitch difference. Now, Wheeler's 34, and I still think he has a few great seasons left. But considering how nasty the NL field is looking, with guys like Strider, Sandy, and Ohtani returning from injury, and obviously Paul Skeens looking like the next all-time great, Wheeler may have to improve upon his already Cy Young caliber campaigns if he wants a shot to grab this honor. And I really hope he does, because he deserves it more than anyone who's active right now. Washington Nationals, the duo of Cruz and Wood. The Nationals are one of the most fun budding teams in baseball at the moment, and the outfield duo of Dylan Cruz and James Wood are probably the biggest reason why. James Wood's a 6'7", 22-year-old who Washington acquired in the original Juan Soto trade, and he shined in his first taste of big league ball, having 9 homers, 14 steals, and a .781 OPS in 79 games. While Dylan Cruz, a college baseball legend who was once compared to Mike Trout, didn't have the same statistical success in his cup of coffee, but he for sure showed the tools were there, flashing a good approach and ability to limit swing and miss without completely sacrificing juice. And he also showed his ability to be a plus defender and runner at the big league level. These are 2 players who could easily make the leap into at least being borderline all-stars as soon as next year. And considering the Nats also lucked out with getting the first overall pick in 2025 as well, if they went with a player with closer proximity like Texas A&M's Jace Laviolette, they could easily have one of baseball's most impressive young outfields sooner rather than later. Miami Marlins. What happens with Sandy? Since 2021, Sandy Alcantara has 10 complete games and 27 starts of at least 8 innings, and both of those rank second in baseball among teams. despite the fact that Sandy missed all of 2024 recovering from Tommy John. You see, that's the type of pitcher that Sandy Alcantara is. And with the Marlins clearly doing another teardown and Alcantara's salary set to double in 2025, it seemed as a spot where the Fish would cash in on a pitcher of Sandy's caliber. And considering he's an average salary of $19 million and is under team control until 2027, if he comes out the gate hot, he could fetch the Marlins an insane return from a contender at the deadline. And I think that's more likely than not. Okay, let's move to the Central. Kansas City Royals. Does Vinny Pasquantino make the leap? Bobby Witt Jr. needs a co-star, and Vinny Pasquantino has all the tools to make that happen. I mean, over the last 3 years, he has a better whiff percentage and average exit velo than Freddie Freeman. And yes, of course, I'm not trying to imply that Pasquatch is better or comparable to the future Hall of Famer, but I just think he's far better than a 760 OPS, and he quite frankly has to be. Because if that staff or Salvi takes any sort of step back, they may be in trouble in a very competitive Central. But in 2025, I think a healthy Vinny P could easily fill this role. Cleveland Guardians. Can Carlos Santana become the goodest of all time? Carlos Santana has returned to where it all started in Cleveland, and he's chasing history. Kind of. Because if he hits at least 15 homers next year and doesn't make an all-star team, he'll become MLB's all-time leader in homers for players with one all-star game or less. Shout out Carlos Santana. Chicago White Sox, the season ending. Okay, I'm kidding. It's about their young pitchers. Drew Thorpe, Noah Schultz, Jairo Iriarte, Kai Bush, Nick Nashrini, Jake Eater, and recently drafted Hagen Smith out of Arkansas gives the White Sox a lot of depth with young pitching. And while some names in that list have way higher ceilings than others, it's going to be very interesting to see how all of these guys progress this season. And considering they will probably be moving Luis Robert soon, if the ultra-talented center fielder finds it again in 2025 and garners a nice package, other arms could very well be joining this fold soon. Detroit Tigers. Who is Spencer Torkelson? Spencer Torkelson was the first overall pick in the 2020 MLB draft, and his time in Detroit has been very up and down, but mostly down. After being just kind of bad in 110 games as a 22-year-old in 2022, Torque broke out in 2023 with 31 tanks and above average offense. However, 2024 got so bad he was sent back down to the minor leagues. And outside of a hot stretch in his return to the bigs, it was individually a big failure of a season. So now, especially with the acquisition of Gleyber Torres sliding Colt Keith to first, I don't know what Torque's full-time role at this team is. Is he a platoon guy? Is he a bench piece? Will he be flipped for a pitcher? Will he be launching homers in Toledo's Mike Hessman home run alley? I guess we'll have to wait and see. Minnesota Twins. Does Pablo Lopez disappoint me again? This is probably the most personal one for me, because I feel like every time I watch a Pablo Lopez start, he turns into prime Pedro Martinez. And this is why it's hard for me to fathom why every year he ends up with the mid to high 3s or 4 ERA. But with him pitching to his potential in the second half, with his four-seamer ticking up an entire mile an hour, I think Lopez can clean up some of his mistakes that left him more prone to the long ball than usual in 2024, and we can finally have that Pablo Lopez season that we've been waiting for in 2025. For context, I've said something along those lines every year since 2022. And while everything in my brain is logically telling me that Pablo doesn't quite have the consistency to have that elite caliber season, I am going to choose to ignore that again. Chicago Cubs. Contract year Kyle Tucker. This offseason, the Cubs made a big but odd splash when they traded for Kyle Tucker. And I say odd because considering Tucker's in a contract year, it seems as they put a lot of eggs in the contending in 2025 basket. And while it's definitely a conversation we can have, I want to focus on this for Tuck himself because he's been one of the best players in baseball for a few years now. And if it wasn't for a freak leg injury on a foul ball, he would have probably had a Soto-adjacent season in 2024. In fact, Tucker's 4.7 B-WAR is the best in MLB history among players who finished a season with less than 300 at-bats. So, considering, at least in my opinion, the overwhelming talent in Houston over the years kind of overshadowed Tucker's greatness, with 2025 being the first year where he's the clear star of the show, I wonder how much a huge contract season will do for his notoriety and his eventual payday. Pittsburgh Pirates. The three-headed monster of Skeens, Jones, and Bubba Chandler. I don't need to explain Paul Skeens to you. He's one of the best young pitching talents that we've ever seen. But these other two have great upside as well. I mean, Jared Jones's rookie year had ups and downs, but when he was on, very few could replicate his skill. Just look at what he did to Bryce Terang. And Bubba Chandler, who hasn't made his MLB debut yet, is another freak talent. This was a guy who was committed to Clemson to play quarterback and baseball. But instead, he was drafted and signed with the Pirates as a two-way guy out of the draft. And after giving up hitting, he has truly ascended as one of the best pitching prospects in the game, pitching to a sub-2 ERA in 39 AAA innings in 2024 with 54 strikeouts. These guys have the skill to create one of the most exciting young three-headed monster rotations of recent memory. And once you add Mitch Keller and all of the impressive arms they have in the farm to the equation, this rotation could be insanely deep sooner rather than later. Milwaukee Brewers. The Miz. The Brewers perfectly represent the next man up mentality, and the newest example of this may come with the closer role in 2025. Because along with all of their electric options at the big league level, they have this alien in the minor leagues that goes by the name Jacob Misiorowski, a long 6'7" arm who touches the triple digits and strikes out the world when he can locate, something he actually did a better job of when they moved him to the pen towards the end of last year. And while others on the MLB roster could definitely fill this role, he's for sure the most interesting option. Cincinnati Reds. Can Matt McLain be Robin to Ellie's Batman? In 2023, a rookie Matt McLain hit .290 with 16 homers, 14 steals, and a WAR over 3 in 89 games. But with a shoulder injury wiping out his 2024 season entirely, his impressive rookie campaign was kind of forgotten. So now in 2025, the Reds are going to need another solid piece in this lineup outside of Ellie to make a push. And especially with them dealing Jonathan India, I think Matt McLain is the best option to do so. Hell, the NL Central's wide open, so this team can make some noise. St. Louis Cardinals. Are they going to be nicer to Jordan Walker? The Jordan Walker saga has been fascinating to follow over the last few years, as it feels like the Cardinals have been purposely trying to sabotage this guy. Because after forcing him to move from third to the outfield to give him a spot on the big league roster, it seems as every time he struggles a little bit in the big leagues, they just send him back to Memphis without giving him a shot to work through it. And that has to be shattering to his confidence. But now, with 2025 clearly not being a year where the Cardinals are looking to be competitive, hopefully they can just give this 22-year-old 500 to 600 plate appearances to figure it out, for better or for worse. I mean, he had .276 with 16 bombs as a 21-year-old. Please let this guy cook. Okay, we're in the West now. Houston Astros. Is 2025 the year of Yordan? Yordan Alvarez is the scariest hitter in baseball, in my opinion. Because while he doesn't have the same peak numbers as a Judge or Ohtani, his ability to combine elite quality of contact numbers with great whiff, strikeout, and walk numbers is basically only matched by Juan Soto. And when you add that to his ability to come through in clutch moments, there is simply nothing that phases Yordan in the box. And while he's been nothing short of incredible over the last few years, I just have a feeling that we haven't seen his peak yet. I mean, he hasn't once had a 40-homer season, he's only OPS over 1,000 once, and he's also only drove in 100 runs once. And with the Astros in a more vulnerable spot offensively with the subtractions of Tucker and likely Bregman, Yordan may feel the pressure to step up this year. And is there any hitter you could possibly trust more under pressure? Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. Is Mike Trout going to be healthy? What if Mike Trout was healthy? That's the question that's dominated the 2020s, and it's sad. Because when it comes to position players, no one is really even close to Trout since 2010. And considering the Angels acquired Jorge Soler, the DH spot has a lot more traffic in it, preventing Trout from getting off his feet in center. You see, I'm not going to act like Trout's going to play 150 games. There's too much track record to suggest otherwise. But for the sake of exercise, if he does play in the triple digits in games, what does that look like? I do not know if he can OPS 1,000 again, but considering his brief stint in 2024 saw him whiff and K less while still having enough juice to hit 10 homers and 109 ABs, I think at the very least, barring catastrophic injury, Trout can get the 400 career homers this year. Seattle Mariners. Who is J-Rod? In 2022, Julio Rodriguez looked like the next great superstar for the Seattle Mariners. I mean, he helped them to their first playoff appearance in 2 decades. But with his sophomore season being a step down and kind of carried by an otherworldly August, and his 2024 being an even more clear step down, his story has not played out as people expected. I think people, I am, people, that's my frame of reference, expected him to have somewhat of a similar ascension to Bobby Witt Jr., but instead, in 2024, he wasn't even half as good. J-Rod is still extremely young, and even if 2025 isn't the year, he can still go on to have an incredible and maybe even Hall of Fame career. However, especially with the last 2 seasons that have ended for Seattle, there has to be even more urgency for Julio to have that breakout this year. Third time has to be the charm, right? Texas Rangers. Is the Bruce Bochy every other year effect back? In the early 2010s, the Bochy-led Giants won the World Series in 2010, 2012, and 2014. However, they missed the playoffs in 2011, 2013, and 2015. And fast forward to 2023. In Bochy's first year back in the dugout, now with the Rangers, they went to the promised land for the first time in franchise history. And with the roster coming back around with breakout candidates like Langford, Carter, and Rocker, new additions like Jock Peterson and Jake Burger, and of course, a return of an ace like Jacob deGrom, is 2025 the return of Bochy's every other year title effect? The Athletics. This offense might be nasty. Say it with me on 3, okay? 1, 2, 3. Fuck John Fisher. But this lineup can kind of mash. Lawrence Butler broke out last year with an .898 OPS and 13 homers in the second half. Brent Rooker hit .293 with 38 tanks and a .165 OPS plus, and JJ Bleday, Shea Langoliers, Tyler Soderstrom, and hell, Miguel Andujar all had good to solid years at the dish, helping the A's be 8th in MLB in homers, making them the only team in the top 12 to have a sub-500 record, and they only won 69 games. So, with them running back this promising offense with guys like the minor league version of Tony Gwynn and Jacob Wilson, and probably as pro-ready of a power bat from the 2024 draft and Nick Kurtz, there might be some high-scoring games in Sacktown in 2025. Giants. Can they break the curse of Barry Bonds? The San Francisco Giants have not had a 30-homer season since Barry Bonds in 2004, and that is despite the fact that every other franchise has had at least one since 2019. And yes, I get it. Oracle Park isn't exactly the easiest place to hit homers, but none since 2004 is simply divine intervention. And if you want proof that's the case, in 2021, Brandon batted 29 homers in less than 100 games, and needing one more to break the curse at Coors Field of all places, he inexplicably squared to bunt and, of course, suffered a season-ending thumb fracture. I stuttered on that, but would leave it in. But back to the present, with a new acquisition like Willy Adames, Matt Chapman being locked up, and a guy like Bryce Eldridge waiting in the wings, this curse could be broken if not this year, at least in the near future. Maybe. Colorado Rockies. Do they have an ace? If I asked you what the Rockies are known for, none of you, well, at least hopefully, would say acquiring and developing pitching talent. And honestly, it's not all their fault. I wouldn't want to pitch on the moon either. But if this narrative was going to be broken by any one guy, it would be Chase Dollander. Because outside of being the favorite to win a Garrett Cole lookalike contest on the mound, Dollander pitched to a 2.59 ERA over 118 minor league innings in 2024 with a K per 9 near 13. His fastball is simply electric with late life, and his breaking balls are good offerings as well, as you're clearly seeing. And this makes Dollander maybe the best pitching talent to ever come through the Rockies system. Yeah, I know John Gray was kind of nasty and Ubaldo Jimenez was very successful too. But Dollander's ceiling might be higher than either of them. And I'm sure Rockies fans are very hyped up for this guy's arrival. San Diego Padres. Who is Fernando Tatis? Jr. I forgot to say Jr. From 2019 to 2021, Fernando Tatis in 273 big league games swatted 81 bombs, stole 53 bases, and had a career .965 OPS. He looked like MLB's next superstar and the next household name of baseball. But before his age 23 season in 2022, his immaturity was apparent, getting into, in his words, multiple motorcycle accidents in the same offseason, with one resulting in an injury that made him miss the whole first half. And while he was out with injury, he failed a drug test for PEDs, something he attributed to ringworm he was dealing with. Now, whether you believe him or not, while his numbers have gone down in his 2 years since, his athletic ability is basically the same, and his 2024 quality of contact numbers look awfully similar to 2021. But we don't give out awards based on hypotheticals, so my question here is, who is Tatis? Is he the player we saw from 2019 to 2021? Is he better? Or is he this 800-ish OPS guy who only shows flashes of his previous greatness? 2025 will give us a bit more information on that question. Arizona Diamondbacks. Are they the National League boogeyman? In 2023, a young D-backs team upset two perceived juggernauts in the same playoffs, sweeping the Dodgers in the NLDS and beating the Phillies in 7 in the CS before falling short in the World Series. However, since baseball's a weird game, despite winning 5 more games in 2024 and having a better run differential by 73, they missed the playoffs. Something that probably made National League teams happy, because in the second half, this squad was scoring 6.2 runs per game and had a team OPS of 838, making them kind of a nightmare matchup if they clinched. But now in 2025, with the pitching staff looking a lot more stable than it did in 2024, highlighted by the addition of Corbin fucking Burns, National League super teams may not want to look under their bed, because they might get bit by a snake. That sucked. And last but not least, the World Series champion Dodgers. Roki Sasaki is officially a Dodger. So what will his rookie season look like? In MLB history, Japanese rookie pitchers have posted a combined 3.99 ERA, and since 2010, that number's at 3.87, which is pretty crazy when you consider that since 1995, there's only been one season, 2013, where the average MLB rookie pitcher had an ERA below 4. And you may be saying, well, Roki ain't an average Japanese pitcher. And I agree. But while he has all the tools to be a generational arm, I mean the fastball splitter combos are already one of the filthiest ever, some growing pains stateside may be apparent for the 23-year-old. Because sparked by a shoulder injury, his fastball definitely took a step back in 2024 shape and velocity wise. And considering the difference in the MPB ball versus the MLB ball that already makes fastballs lose nastiness, it's definitely something to keep an eye on. Along with the fact that Sasaki, who already struggles with controlling the run game, is entering a league with a pitch clock with more steal attempts. Although one issue in his game, his workload concerns, will likely be managed very well in LA, as the Dodgers have enough starting pitching to create 2 different top 5 rotations in baseball, which probably means they'll get pretty creative with the rotation, especially with multiple pitchers coming off injury. So yes, Sasaki is definitely incredible, but he's not a final product, and I don't know if that should be encouraging or terrifying for non-Dodgers teams. But that was one interesting or random or fascinating storyline for each MLB team for this upcoming season. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe if you want to see more of this, and see you next time.